Hey folks, Brendan here from Blue Light, and for those of you who haven't seen any of my videos before, over the past 5 or 6 years I've been helping to support people in the police recruitment process with a lot of success. My guess is a good 3,000 or so people are in the police as a result of the support I've provided for them. So what this video is about today, quite a few of you are applying to forces that are asking questions like, what are the current challenges the police face? How would you approach dealing with the needs and requirements of diverse communities within our force? Questions like that, very much community-based ones, very much problem-solving ones, community-facing type problems. Because I think a lot of chief officers now are starting to realise that they can't just keep going with this level of response policing and solve many of the problems that complex communities, complex families and individuals have. It's going to require more than just the police and its partners. It's going to require community as well. So why I'm reminded of all of this is because over the past few years I've been involved in a project called Unity, which is a European project which has had as its aim to improve the relationship between citizens and the police right across Europe. I was on their international advisory board as a result of some of the work I've done in neighbourhood policing over the past decade or so. And some of the approaches that I sort of pioneered years ago that were sort of tutted at and no one really understood, which I now get to speak at conferences about, which is quite bizarre really. The stuff I used to get my backside kicked for is now being highly valued, but I guess that's how the world works. And you probably noticed I'm not in my usual office. Here I am in Arbanasi, which is close to Veliko Trnovo in the beautiful country of Bulgaria. So there might be a little bit of background noise because you've probably noticed I'm outside. And there you go, on cue, a little bit of background noise. So whilst you're watching this, if you do like what you're watching and you're watching this on Facebook, please like away. And if you'd like to join over 4,000 members of my police recruitment Facebook support group, just drop me a little comment in the box below. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do subscribe, and by the magic of email, you will be informed every time I publish a new video. How cool is that, hey? So there you go. Right, well, what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to give you a big talk about Unity because there's hundreds of pages of documentation that go behind Unity. Just going to talk about 6 of the pillars. And forgive me, I'm just going to read off these to make sure I get them in the right order. They are, and this is what community policing needs to have to be effective. So the first part, the foundation really, is trust and confidence building, followed by accountability, information sharing and communication, addressing local needs, collaboration and crime prevention. So when all of those things are blended together in the right order, almost like baking a cake, we will see effective community policing. It means many things to different countries, to different places, to different forces right across the UK. Some forces have almost got rid of community policing. They might dress it up as something, but really it's more like case management of difficult, complex families and individuals. And that's not neighbourhood policing or community policing. That's case management of complex and problematic families and individuals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience of community policing and perhaps give you some ideas. My ideas are still not widespread across the United Kingdom, although there's a couple of forces I'm working with at the moment, Gloucestershire and very soon West Yorkshire Police, where myself and some colleagues at both academic and ex-police background are helping to support a culture change within those forces. So think less public servant and think more citizen enabling. And this isn't a new idea. This goes back all the way to 1829 when Sir Robert Peel said that the police should always remember the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. Now you often hear that one rolled out, but what you don't often hear is the second part of that principle, which goes along these lines. So the full principle, here you go, see if I can remember it word for word. The police should remember the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. The police just being members of the public who are paid full time to carry out a role which is incumbent on all citizens in the interests of community welfare and existence. So back in 1829, I think Sir Robert Peel got the concept of enabling citizens as opposed to being their pure servants. We often hear that phrase, public servants. I don't think it's a phrase which we need to encapsulate anymore to help us through some of today's complex problems. I think when we operate under a model of you said we did, we increase the client-dependent relationship in many communities or in many families on public services, it's that phrase again, services, and the police, so that they become increasingly reliant on the police and other services to solve the problems that they're more than capable of solving themselves. It's not the police or council that make communities safe, it's communities that make communities safe. The police should just be the glue that helps bind together the efforts of the community to enable them to do so. Now, this isn't to say that members of the community should be out there arresting people who are in organised crime gangs or money lenders, illegal money lenders, or burglars, or people who are committing street robberies. No, far from it. That's the job of the police, but they can't do it without the willing cooperation and support of the police service. And what Robert Peel was suggesting is that the police should not be apart from the community, they should be a part of it, because they're just citizens who are paid full-time to carry out a role which is incumbent on all citizens in the interests of, and this is a bit, that's a beautiful part, community welfare and existence. He didn't say about reducing crime, he didn't say about arresting offenders. He talked about community welfare and existence. So when I became a neighbourhood inspector 12, 13 years ago, I looked at this concept and thought, what we're doing now isn't working. It'll never work. This concept of you said, we did, hoping that that's going to boost confidence, might work in the short term, but what it's going to do is just create client dependency, and I just didn't see that as a healthy thing. I like that concept of community welfare and existence. So to me, a community that had a high level of community welfare and existence, whatever you choose to attach as a meaning to that, would be one that would have less crime, would be one where the police would be seen as being a part of the community as opposed to apart from it. So the first thing we had to start doing was to build up trust and confidence, and the way we did that was, and this is one of several things I did, I'm just going to throw a few ideas at you to get you thinking. You need to go and research this in the context of the thoughts that you're applying to. So one of the things we started doing was, not you said we did, but you didn't have to say, but we did it anyway. So I cancelled a lot of the meetings that the council and police wanted me to have with the community, because I took a ride around on my police bike, looked at the status of those communities, and thought, I'm not going to ask people questions about what the problems are here. They're just going to look at me and go, duh, don't you look around at the broken bus stops, smashed up, disused, unusable phone boxes, vandalism everywhere, broken bottles, evidence of street drinking, homelessness. You can just reel off the problems which are highly visible. So I wanted my team and the partners to start not having weeks of action. I wanted us to have every week as being a week of action, every day, 365 days of action. Why would you have a week of action and then have 51 weeks of non-action? Just don't get that. So I wanted every week to be a week of action. I wanted it to be everyone's problem. So everyone who worked in a place had responsibility for that place. The concept of working in silo wasn't one that I favoured. I wanted everyone working in ownership of that place, because they're citizens who are being paid full-time to carry out a role, etc., etc. So this involved me coming up with lots of little phrases, some that I picked from elsewhere. One of them that I quite liked was, the standard you walk past is a standard that you're prepared to accept. So if you walk past that broken phone box and don't do something about it, then you're prepared to accept it, and then people will watch you being prepared to accept it, and they will prepare to accept it as a norm. So I used to hear people talking about, oh, well, it's Offerton, you know, it's only Offerton, or it's only Salemore, you know, it's always been like that. Well, no, that's not good enough, because the other principle I operated behind was the Great Budworth test. Great Budworth, a beautiful little village in Cheshire, and that was my test. If the behaviour, no matter what it might be, would not be acceptable in this beautiful little village called Great Budworth, where there's cobbled streets and thatched roofs, then why is it acceptable here? I actually rolled that out in court once when I closed down a nightclub because it had had shots fired at it the night before, and they tried to suggest, the solicitors for the licensees, that this sort of behaviour should be acceptable in an urban environment. No, because I applied the Great Budworth test. Anyway, I wanted to get people a little bit more angry about the situation they were in. Why were they accepting this as being okay? Why were they accepting these high levels of crime, disorder, and a lack of future for their young people as being just okay and just the way it is? Unacceptable. So as part of that trust and confidence building, and then in a way accountability, because I'd shared data with them that I could share to get them feeling a little bit fired up. I'd also, I remember on one occasion we hired some minibuses and took some of our own police buses, and we took a load of people from an area that was far more challenging to this beautiful little town near where I live called Knutsford in Cheshire. It's part of the Golden Triangle, where if you want a 3-bedroom detached house, there. You're looking at upward of 500,000, but it's absolutely gorgeous, and the park is pristine. And that's the first place I took them to and said, this is where the children of Knutsford play. Is it like the park that your children play in? And they all went, no, it's nothing like it. Ours has got broken glass all over it, broken play equipment. It's an absolute SH1T hole. Right, well, what are you going to do about it then? Get angry. You should be banging on my door all the time about this. Get angry about this. And so they did. And so that's when we started thinking about addressing local needs. But this is addressing local needs now with them coming up with the ideas. So as opposed to the questions being, tell me what the problems are, the questions were more like, tell me about a time when you've been proud of this community. Tell me about a time when you've come together as neighbours to do something positive. Or if I could just get 3 of you together from this street, what is it you do to make this street a better place to live in? So the ideas need to come from the community, and one of the models I utilised was something called appreciative inquiry, a concept that was applied to organisations by a chap called David Cooper-Ryder. British Airways and other big organisations have utilised it. I utilised that concept in communities. So the addressing local needs was the community addressing local needs and me and my team enabling them to do so. Now this was sometimes in communities that had no community groups to speak of, so we had to kickstart and fire some of those up, fire up the power within the community. So we used models like participatory budgeting, and we know Greater Manchester Police is looking at, alongside the councils of Greater Manchester, to use that as a commissioning model to help support community groups to do the things that they're very good at doing. So things like homeless charities or mum support groups or play groups for young people, that sort of thing. Football teams. The value of a football team, my goodness, you can't put a number on it. So one of the models I used was participatory budgeting, where I managed to blag from the Home Office and my own force and from other places chunks of £20,000, and I'd give that to the community and say to them, you decide how to spend this. Now it comes under a structured approach where they have to vote for the ideas, and we have to encourage people to come up with their own ideas, by the way. This is their own ideas. So three years later, the sort of ideas they're coming up with was faith groups who are going to prisons to meet offenders at the prison gates, to welcome them back into their community as citizens, not as ex-offenders. Mum support groups who are helping out with mental health issues and also sorts of other social needs. A care leavers group, a woman who was a care leaver who set up a support network for those who leave care and often find themselves with nothing, getting involved in criminality. A couple of dads that came together to form a football team for young people. It's now got 8 teams. That's over 120, 140 young people coming together to do far more positive things, who've got role models now that were 10 years old 10 years ago, who are now 20 years old, who are now coaching them. So the role models they've got in their community are no longer the drug dealers driving around in the flash cars, but the football coaches, the mums coming together, the other parents coming together to help support youth groups and other activities. So in the end, after 3 or 4 years, there were over 40 community groups coming together under an association of associations. So that's that collaboration part of one of the pillars of unity. This isn't about doing to communities, this is about doing with and supporting and enabling communities, where you don't provide the solutions come from a community. And what this does is it helps build up that, goes back to that pillar again, is that trust and confidence. So what you start getting is people providing you with information that you never would have got before. So we were conducting search warrants like for fun. You know, we were recovering £10,000, £20,000 worth of hidden money, £10,000 worth of cocaine, firearms, a loaded firearm on one occasion. I remember approaching the individual who had it in the pannier of their pedal cycle. What great information that was that we picked up. So some really good information started coming from the community, and there was no place for organised crime syndicates. We went about destroying their ability to commit crime in a very systematic way, and what that created was a vacuum, because ordinarily in that vacuum the up-and-coming sort of corporals and sergeants would self-promote themselves within the organised crime syndicate. Well, we didn't give them the space to do so because we filled that vacuum with strong, cohesive community. So there you go, folks. There's a few ideas for you. I always tell my clients to get out there in community and ask police officers what they're doing, ask PCSOs what they're doing, but sometimes do more than that. So some of my clients I've tasked up with going to visit community centres, going to visit various places of worship, And one of those, I'll just give you an example of what worked for one of my clients. She used it at a final interview. She came across a community centre, went to visit it, went talking to people there, came across some mums who wanted to form a mums support group, but we couldn't find a slot that was available at the community centre because it was often being used by the council as a place to hold meetings. That's not what they're for, by the way, council. They're there for the community. I know you're kind of part of that community, but just because you fund it doesn't mean to say you can run all your meetings from there. Anyway, those mums wanted to form a bit of a support network for other mums. She also visited a Gurdwara, a Sikh temple, where I think it's the Guru, the head of the Sikh temple, spoke to her and said that they've got all these meeting rooms and they'd like the Gurdwara to be part of the community more. No matter what people's faith is, they'd all be very welcome. So it's a no-brainer, this one, isn't it? She just thought, mums who have a need, Gurdwara who has a need, I'll just put them in touch. And so she did. And the mums support group now operates from the Gurdwara. So if you think about it, how much demand has that stopped? All those mums now no longer become lonely. They no longer start becoming reliant on drugs, both prescribed and otherwise. They no longer start getting mental health problems. They no longer start passing those on to their children. And if there's football clubs, cheerleading clubs, youth groups, like Echoes 2 in Coney Hill in Gloucestershire that was set up by a PCSO who asked a very different type of questions, not what the problems are, but what can I do to help support you create a vision for your community. It took a long time, but that group now has been credited with reducing antisocial behaviour and crime in that area by about 20-30%. So all of these things work, but they're very long term and they're very much about addressing the needs of different communities, very much about focusing on the communities as places of where they've got the power themselves, the capability. They're places of promise, places, no matter where it is, by the way, no matter where it is, they're places of promise where people have ideas if you just enable them to do so. So that's that collaboration coming in again. And before any of you say, yeah, but in some of our inner cities it's not like that. Oh yes it is. £1,000 challenge. I'll put £1,000 to a charity of your choice if I can't find 5 people in the space of a day in one of those communities who cares enough to act, to cares enough to do those things like form those mum support groups, the football teams for young children, get off the backsides and help form a youth group, cycling group, walking group for older people, whatever it might be. People in communities coming together to do the things that are very positive in that community, to help them become communities where there's a strong sense of welfare and existence. Anyway, I've been going on now for 17 minutes. I normally talk for 30 to 40 or even an hour at my conferences, so I've just conference talks I often give, so I've just taken you through a bullet point version there. Hope you found it useful. If you've got any comments, please do add them below. Very much giving you a whistle-stop tour around some of the things that I've been doing in the past that will very much help give you some ideas, I hope, to answer those questions as part of the police recruitment process. But if you're already in the job, hopefully inspire you a little bit to start thinking about how you can nudge and shift yourself from that concept of being a public servant to a citizen enabler. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like I said, it's quite a long one, but hopefully quite useful for you. And I shall catch up with you very soon. Bye-bye for now.